I'm going to give you 6 reasons not to reach for your iPhone to take photos just because you think it's easier than your DSLR.
Now, there are loads of things that are really scary, right? Dracula, Frankenstein, ghosts and ghouls and graveyards, and your camera. What? Yeah, that's right. I said your camera. Look, I hear this from people over and over again. They see I'm a professional photographer and they say, oh yeah, I've got a DSLR at home, but actually I tend to use my phone for photography really, it's just a bit easier. And I think to myself, why? I mean, it's easier to learn to ride a bike than it is to learn to drive a car, isn't it? But most car drivers aren't going to insist on pedalling their way to work every day just because it's easier than driving a car, now would they? It's time to find out why people who buy bridge cameras and DSLRs, even mirrorless, why they leave them in a drawer gathering dust and snap away on their mobile phones instead. I had a customer telling me this only this week. They had a DSLR, but they gave up on it. And now they use their phone. So I probed a bit deeper. I asked a few questions. Why was it that they weren't using the DSLR? Well, the phone's easier, turns out. What was actually happening here was the DSLR had frightened them off. All those buttons, too many dials, menus, functions. Nah, thanks, I'll use the iPhone. It just works. I don't need to know how it works. It just works. So I decided to point some things out to them. Things which it turns out they hadn't really ever considered. So the first reason not to ditch the camera for the phone is that switching on full auto turns it into the exact same thing as the phone. Just switch on auto mode. That's auto exposure, auto focus, auto ISO and auto white balance. Oh, and you can also turn the screen on permanently as well. And hey presto, you now have the exact same thing as the phone. Reason number 2 is that right where your thumb is a wheel called an EV control, and that stands for exposure value. It'll have a plus on the one side and a minus on the other, and that gives you control of the exposure, even in auto mode. Want the picture a bit darker? Just scroll the wheel around towards the minus. Job done. Easy. Reason number 3 is that when the camera is set on auto exposure mode, just like the phone, it's working out the correct exposure without you having to do anything. But unlike the phone, it will usually have 3 types of auto exposure. That's spot, center weighted or matrix. And that means you can decide on whether to choose a specific area, like for instance a face, where you want it exposed properly, or simply the center portion of the image, or even an average of the whole image. So now you have a little more control over the exposure. More control than you had with the phone. Reason 4 is lenses. The camera has a very small lens and you're stuck with it. And although the processors are doing a great job getting a decent image from that lens, it's never ever going to be able to compete with a precision lens or a zoom lens, something which gives you access to subjects much further away. This is particularly true with bridge cameras because they tend to have really great zoom ranges. Reason 5 is that a camera gives you the option of adding flash. It may even have its own pop-up flash. Yep, the phone has got a tiny little light doubling up as a flash, but actually it's pretty hopeless if you've ever used one. The camera though gives you a hot shoe and the option of proper lighting, and that's a huge step up from a phone. And finally, reason 6 is that the camera gives you the option to come off full auto if you want to. You can choose your own shutter speed, do long exposures, flash, choose your own aperture and therefore depth of field or bokeh. You can decide on ISO sensitivity for low light shooting. And what's more, all of those different options are offering you something that the phone can never ever offer you. And that is the ability to learn, to improve your photography, to gain knowledge, to understand. And you can only learn when you have the ability to control the camera functions.
Hey, so if you know anybody who's a little bit frightened to pick up their camera and tends to reach for their iPhone instead, tell them about this, or better still, send them the video, share it with them. Now, I've got some great videos on the channel if you're into photography, and Here's a good one. I want you to take a look at this.